on that quickly about it presents itself differently with African Americans than it does in any other culture. Because we went to school, right? And we got a lot of stuff on counseling theories and everything that goes along with that. But I don't think it was very. I mean, and you got your multiculturalistic class that you had to take that they tried to. Oh God, I don't want to get into. Well, who's going to cancel me anyway?
Okay. So I have intake forms. All an intake form is just background information on a prospective client. So of course, one day I'm in office and a prospective client needs to fill out this intake form. She asked for a pen. I said, I'm sorry, I don't have one, but I do have an ex-wife. And some of you guys might be asking something, James, are you bitter? No, I'm not bitter. Shout out to her. Wish her well. But anyway, thank you for tuning into the Mind of a Man podcast, where divorce aftercare is one of my biggest sellers this season. Thank you, COVID. So without further ado, let the conversation begin. Bartender, cue the music.
Welcome to the Mind of a Man podcast, a podcast where men have manversations on topics they rarely discuss, such as health, family, and wealth, to name a few. Now, here's your host, James Bush.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to the Mind of a Man podcast. Today, we have somewhat of a special guest. He's a therapist, marriage and family therapist at that. Oh, and by the way, my name is James Bush. I'm a black guy, a therapist. Pleased to meet you. And before we even go any further, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We release content every week, so it's important to subscribe. So hit the bell. Cool. Now getting back to the business at hand. We got a guy. His name is Aaren, and he's marriage and family therapist. Aaren, welcome to our show.
Welcome. It's good to be here.
Most definitely. Again, people, Aaren is a marriage and family therapist. He's not a professional counselor. A little shade, a little hate on that other side right there. But Aaren, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. Yes, that's true. I'm an author, public speaker, activist, writer, you name it. I do a lot in the mental health field. I primarily work in the communities, the inner cities, with families that are involved in the court system.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. And I currently live in Toledo, Ohio. That's where I work at as well.
Okay. So was you around in Detroit when they had the Malice in the Palace?
Yep. I was watching that game when it happened. Well, I couldn't believe with my eyes. I'm like, what the? I just was so shocked and surprised that it went down like that. And it's just crazy for me to say that I actually saw it when it happened. So, yeah, I was around for sure.
And the crazy thing is, I just saw a little documentary on it, and what you thought you saw, there was more to the story that we didn't see.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of stuff unfolded behind that. During that time, man, I was a huge Pistons fan. I used to watch every game.
All right, Aaren. I'm a little bit unconventional, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna start off with game time, just a little bit of icebreaker. Well, actually, it's not an icebreaker. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do 5 questions, random trivia, stuff that a marriage and family therapist should know.
Okay.
And then we're gonna see if you get all 5 right, you get a little bit of swag from the Mind of a Man podcast ball. If you don't,
okay, cool.
I get bragging rights. All right. So question number 1. How many horns does the average African black rhino have?
Oh man, what? I don't know. I'm gonna guess and say 6.
There goes your swag.
Uh,
All right, we get a little bit of in the Marvel moment right now.
okay.
You familiar with comics?
Yeah, I'm a little more familiar with comics than African Rhinos for sure.
Yeah, I know. I rigged that one though.
I
Question
see.
number 2. Thor is the son of which Norse god?
Oh man, I know this too. Let me think for a second. Not Zeus.
That's wrong, but keep going, keep going. I'm gonna give you a little leeway on that. Keep trying.
It ain't Loki because that's his brother, right? I don't know.
All right, number 3. Number three. Which states did the U.S. gain as a result of the Mexican-American War?
Texas.
Oh, got that one right. All right.
See, there you go.
We cooking with gas now. Let's see if we can get these next 2. Make it decent. All right. What sign of the zodiac is the first air sign of the calendar year?
I'm gonna say Capricorn.
Let me give you another shot at that one, man.
Say the question again.
All right. What sign of the zodiac is the first air sign of the calendar year?
The first air sign?
Yeah.
Aries? I mean, I don't even understand the question for real.
Aquarius. But you good though. All right. I know you're going to get this last one. Please do. Which U.S. coast is the state of Maryland, my home, MD, located on?
East.
All right, my man. You got it together. You made it respectable in there.
Yeah.
Mr. Marriage and Family Therapist. That's all right, Aaron. That's cool.
The States is what saved me.
The States is what saved you. All right. So now, let's get into it now. What do people want to hear about?
Okay.
Aaron, what led you to the field of mental health?
Well, when I went to my undergrad, which was at Central State University at HBCU, I did psychology. That was my major. And, my whole time in undergrad, I really didn't know anything about mental health.
Right.
Mental health really wasn't my focus. I just kind of chose something just to do it, really.
Right.
And when I graduated, there wasn't a lot of jobs in the psychology field for a bachelor's level clinician. So a lot of people told me that in order to really make some money and really do some good work in the community, you had to go back to school to get the master's. So I went back to get the master's. And when I went back to get the master's, I kind of fell in love with the field. So more or less what brought me into the field was not having a lot of options on the bachelor's level.
Yeah, and I can definitely agree with that. It was almost somewhat of a foregone conclusion that you had to go that extra mile to actually do something. But when you start to get into it and you're learning and you're meeting people and you hear all these different stories. I mean, sometimes people ask me why I did what I did. I said, because I'm nosy. I'm nosy. It's just one of those things where you hear the stories and you meet people and you're able to hopefully, man, help somebody along the way in this process. It's somewhat similar to knowing how the machine is made and how it works. And it's very fascinating, everything that goes into it.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, Aaron, you wrote a book.
Yep, I sure did.
And the name of the book is Black Mental Health Matters. Man, catch the title. Man, I think it's definitely something that's necessary for this time that we're going through right now. What was the inspiration behind that book, Aaron?
Well, I was working at a jail as a intake counselor. And while I was at the jail, the majority of the people that I seen were African American people. And most of those people were having these uncomfortable experiences, uncomfortable thoughts, and many of them did not realize that the thoughts and the experiences that they were having were related to mental illnesses, diagnosable mental illnesses. So that's what compelled me to teach people that these mental illnesses are common, that these are things that are diagnosable and can be treated, because most of the people in there did not realize that the problems that they were suffering through were mental illnesses. Furthermore, they did not realize that a lot of the unaddressed mental illnesses that they had were the primary reason why they were cycling in and out of jail. So for me, it was just like a no-brainer. Like, if I want to solve this problem, writing a book about it would help somebody get the treatment that they need.
So, what were some of the most mental health disorders that you noticed while you were in that facility?
I noticed a lot of people had depression, which led to them making a lot of dysfunctional decisions throughout their lives. I noticed a lot of them had substance abuse disorder. I noticed a lot of them had generalized anxiety, and PTSD was a huge one. And a lot of times people don't really understand that within Black people and in Black culture, our symptoms present themselves much different than other cultures, just like other cultures' symptoms present themselves differently than our culture. Really, each culture needs a mental health matters book, but it just so happened that I was the best guy to write Black mental health matters cultural book.
I really want you to go back and touch on that quickly about it presents itself differently with African Americans than it does in any other culture, because we went to school, right? And we
Yep.
got a lot of stuff on counseling theories and everything that goes along with that. But I don't think it was very. I mean, and you got your multiculturalistic classes
Right.
you have to take that they tried to. Oh God, I don't want to get into. Well, who's going to cancel me anyway? You have the
Yeah.
multiculturalism class that they tried to push to say that, okay, that we're well rounded, that we're looking at it from a totalistic viewpoint. However,
Mm-hmm.
there is different details that each culture shares. And if
Yep.
you're not aware of those things, you could be lost. So what I want you to do is I want you to kind of give us a little bit more of a snapshot of what it means when it comes to African Americans in this country and mental health.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of times when I say that the symptoms present themselves differently, what I'm really referring to is that Black people, just like any cultural group, have certain norms and behaviors, right? And when those behaviors become dysfunctional, they may not look the same as another culture's dysfunction. Each culture have their own version of dysfunction. So for a Black man, depression might not look the same way that it looks in the textbook where they teach us what depression is. Like, the typical depression is, self-deprecating thoughts. It's sleeping a lot, or sleeping too little, or eating a lot, or eating too little, or it may be um, uh, aches and pains or whatever, right? But when it comes to Black people, we just present that maybe a little bit different. Like, it might be irritability, but that irritability may not look like how it look with a white guy. Like, irritability with depression might look like a Black guy's snapping at you and you just think he aggressive, or it might look like staying in the house all day playing a game when you just think he lazy, but it's just really the way that he culturally responds to that mental illness. And PTSD is another one where a lot of times people don't really understand the dynamics behind PTSD in general, but they definitely don't understand it, how a Black man growing up in the ghetto might present himself in doing in managing that disorder. His maladaptive coping skills may look a lot different than a white woman who's experiencing PTSD. The black man may show his PTSD by walking around with a pistol on. You know what I mean? He may show his PTSD by dropping out of high school. He may show his PTSD, or at least trying to protect himself from the symptoms, by joining a gang for protection. You know what I mean? So a lot of times, if you don't have a culturally competent clinician, they won't even pick up on those things. They just simply look at that person as maladaptive, or they just simply look at those coping skills as something that's to be stigmatized.
So it's interesting. You mentioned a whole lot right there. And one of the things that quickly came to mind when we were talking about self-deprecation, is when we're looking at slavery. And a lot of the stuff that was told and taught to African Americans during the period of slavery.
Yes.
And we know how that stuff has translated to our current day society, especially with our people. And it's amazing that when you have a culture that has been through that, and they haven't really been treated. I mean, we were given religion to some extent, or spirituality, but that wasn't all the end all of what we were looking for and what we were needing. And so it makes a lot of sense that, I mean, why we have what we have today is because of the stuff that we were programmed, in a sense.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate, because if there was a level of more of understanding of just basically, man, how this process works, I think that we would possibly have better and more favorable outcomes. It's no secret that when you were talking about the incarceration, mental health, that 50% of all incarcerated have some level of substance abuse or mental health disorder. I mean, and so they're running and they're working with something. They're working from something and they're running from something, or they're working through something at that point in time. And I don't think that people take that into consideration. I don't think that we have enough qualified and trained professionals to address the matter. And because of that, we have what we have in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, that's facts.
Facts, I mean. But question segment number 2. I gotta ask, because I was trolling your Instagram. Yeah, I stalked you for a minute to see what all this was going to become of this. I'm like, who is this guy? And you said something. It spawned the idea of, what do some people, especially us as folks, African Americans, misunderstand about the topic of mental health. And you had a short clip where you were talking about happiness, and we only rent happiness on a daily basis. I was like, damn, that's kind of that dude kind of cold with that one right there. I might have to. I'm not gonna let up off of him though, but I mean, that's kind of cool right there. And I want you to kind of tell our audience about that term happiness, because I hear it so much, and it makes me want to just, man, if I had hair, I don't have any hair anymore, but if I had it, I want to kind of pull it out, because I think sometimes people have a misconception about that. Talk to us about that, Aaren.
Yeah, I think the misconception around happiness is that it's something that either you have or you don't have. And a lot of times people don't really understand is happiness, just like anything else in life, is something you got to really work towards. And it takes intentional effort and consistency to really accomplish happiness. Like you don't just wake up and be happy. Happiness comes from developing a certain mind state. Because that's what it is a mind state. It's not a character trait. It is not something that's just bestowed upon you. You have to really be diligent about becoming happy. And that's the secret a lot of people don't understand. They think that you just become blessed and you get happiness and everything is sweet. You know what I mean? But the truth of the matter is that the people who are happiness, they're happy the people who are happy, they're happy because they've worked at it. You know, that they've surrounded themselves around the right people. They fed themselves the right thoughts. They've rid themselves of things that may be barriers to their happiness. And, you know, I like to teach people that most of the time, the things that make you unhappy are not necessarily your circumstances, but it's the way you think about certain things. So if I can teach people to learn how to think in a more efficient manner, then they can become happy.
I think that's so important because as a therapist, you work with a lot of couples, and, and one of the chief complaints is, James, I'm not happy anymore. And I'm
Right.
thinking to myself, you're not happy. Just wait a little while. Just a little bit. And I think sometimes too, there's a misunderstanding of the difference between contentment and happiness. Contentment does not involve another individual. Contentment comes from within. It's like what you know about yourself, what you've processed, what you've learned through your journey in life or so. And I think that's so important for us to begin to grab a hold of when we start placing our happiness, per se, in the hands of another individual. I liken it to having a Nintendo, I'm dating myself, Nintendo joystick.
Yeah.
Where you hit A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. And you get that spoon and make it go faster to make that player on the screen do all kinds of little stuff. You're giving the controls to your happiness to another individual. And I'm going to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, to me, that's the stupidest thing that anybody can ever do.
Facts.
Why? Why? We have to work at this thing called life. We have to, one, continue to learn about ourselves. Learn what it is that we like in this day and age. The things that I liked when I was 7 and 8 are not necessarily the things that I like now. I mean, there's a plethora of that. The sugary cereals. I can't eat that stuff like that right now.
Right. You don't even think the same no more.
The commentary. I mean, yeah, I will gander at the different news media and those things because that stuff is germane to what I'm doing, the community. 7 and 8, I wasn't worried about that. I wasn't thinking about social awareness and COVID and all the other kind of stuff that goes along that. So it's important for us to kind of lock into, okay, who are we? Where are we evolving to? And if we don't do that, then we place ourselves at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
I mean, give us some of the things that you've seen as a marriage and family therapist. And your practice,
some of the things that I've seen, like you were saying, though, definitely me having worked with a lot of couples, I definitely see a lot of people saying they're not happy no more. And they say those type of things because, like you were saying, they're giving the responsibility of happiness to their partner. They're expecting the partner to be the one who makes them happy. And quite frankly, that just doesn't work that way. And then they wonder why they're upset and having these problems because the truth of the matter is happiness, especially when you are in a relationship, it have to come from you. You know what I mean? You got to put that work in, and nobody is ever going to be able to make you happy. Like, if you're not happy with something deep down inside of you, whatever that may be, nothing somebody else is going to do is going to make you happy. It might help you out temporarily, but over time, it's just that unhappiness is just going to resurface. So that's one of the main things that I've seen in my time as a marriage and family therapist is that people put too much responsibility for their emotions on somebody else. And it just don't work like that. Everybody got to be responsible for their own emotions, and they got to do what is necessary to get the emotional results that they want. So that's definitely one thing that I've seen. And another thing that I've seen in terms of the parents is a lot of times parents have yet to reconcile with the fact that their kids are not going to be exactly who they want them to be. You know, a lot of times people get so caught up in wanting their kids to be these straight A students, these superstar athletes, this highly intellectual prodigy or whatever, that they forget that the kids got to walk their own path. You know, the kids are not going to be the person that you want them to be. And as long as they are a good, moral, well-adjusted person in society, that's really all you can ask for as a parent. You have to just be the person who guides them to living a good life. You can't pick their life out for them. So that's also another one. And you know, me being a family therapist and dealing with a lot of kids who are in the juvenile justice system, I also see a lot of parents who kids are in the predicaments that they're in because they develop a permissive parenting style. And what I mean by that is that they more so want to be their kid's friend than be their parent. And to me, that's selfish. And I say it's selfish because you're putting your need to be liked by your kids over their need for structure, for balance, and for discipline, which is something that is essential in life to be a well-adjusted human being.
So wait a minute, Mr. Marriage and Family Therapist.
Yeah.
You mean today, with the whole advent of EI, emotional intelligence, and all this research that we have out there about, not being as punitive, participation trophy, coddling. You mean that is not actually helping us be better parents to our children? What
Absolutely
say you?
not.
Go ahead with that.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, I think that we certainly have come a long way in regards to the way that we parent our kids. Like, you know, the old just let's beat them into being productive members of society. That does not work. That let me make that clear. However, being a friend doesn't work either. You got to find some type of balance in that thing called parenting in order to raise kids to be the type of people they need to be. Now, granted, everything that the kids do ain't the parents' fault. Sometimes kids just make their own choices and they do messed up stuff, you know, but I think a lot of times parents just don't find the right balance. Either they too strict or they too nice and they don't really respect their kids as people enough.
And I agree with that, because I'm not saying that being as punitive is the answer. All kids are different. We know that from attachment styles. We know that from different temperatures and epigenetics and different background settings and experiences. All of them are different. We know that some people, they can eat a lot of salt, and some people can't stand salt. We know this. And so I think it's attention to detail, being able to learn about the child that you have in front of you, and then go from there. Learn what works for them and what is successful, what brings out the most favorable outcomes, what helps them get those better grades, what helps them become more physically active, what helps them have an increased mood, what helps them form healthy relationships. I was doing another podcast recently on people pleasing and attachment styles, and I'm saying, my gosh, it's like, in a sense, we have a culture that is promoting people pleasers. Guys, guys, you must do this for the girl to like you. Guys, you must do that for the girl to like you. Like, you idiot. That's not gonna work.
Yes.
She's only gonna like what you can do for her. She's not gonna really like you. And I think it's very important that we begin to educate our young men and our young women about the rules of life, what actually works and what doesn't work, man. So, all right, Aaron, we've got my third segment for you. And I wanted to say this for last because this one is something that I've seen for myself. And you had something, again, I was trolling your Instagram. It was the Marriage and Family Therapist. And I saw you had a comment on PTSD. I'm going to pull it up because I think it's so important that we start to realize that there are a lot of things that are going on in our communities that are just going unnoticed. You mentioned earlier about the prison system and the individuals that are incarcerated and a lot of the backgrounds that they came from, and that's important. I remember I had a guy who was in one of I ran a substance abuse program in the city of Nashville for a while. And I had a guy who, we were in group one day and he was just talking about what it was to be shot. Yeah. And the loudness, the sound, the bullet just piercing the skin, the blood,
Mm-hmm.
the gunpowder, the after smell, the pain, and all these different things that he was describing. And then how that affected him when he would hear fireworks, how that affected him when he would walk in areas that were similar to the place that he got shot.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm sitting and I'm listening to all this, I'm like, he's pretty much describing PTSD.
Yeah.
Pretty much on the real, he's describing PTSD. And that's unfortunate. And many in our community, we don't realize that sometimes even trauma, it's on a continuum.
Mm-hmm.
There are big things that happen in some people's lives that affect them differently than other folks, but it's still trauma.
Yeah.
And so I want you to touch on that topic about PTSD and what you were talking about in the hood on your IG.
Yeah. Trauma and PTSD and all those different concepts are different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
One person trauma might be getting picked on in school, or somebody making fun of their sneakers or whatever. But for somebody else, trauma might be getting shot at, or getting shot, or getting raped as a child, or something. Trauma is what trauma does, and you can experience PTSD based on your own threshold of trauma. But when it comes to the brothers in the hood, a lot of times the trauma or the situations that bring about the trauma are so normalized that the trauma itself becomes normalized. Mm-hmm. And the effects of the trauma may not present themselves on a conscious level, but subconsciously, you still experience the after effects of trauma, like the damage that the trauma does to your brain is mm-hmm. still there, although you may not necessarily recognize it within your own intellectual capacity as trauma, if that makes sense. Like you may not know that you're traumatized by seeing somebody get shot, but in the back of your mind, you may still have anxiety symptoms, mm-hmm. PTSD symptoms about things like that. You may still have the chemical imbalance that is associated with trauma, although you may not be consciously thinking about trauma. And that's so common in the inner city because crime is a heightened situation in the inner cities of America. And that goes all the way back to not just inner city living, but mm-hmm. slavery and Jim Crow as well.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you said that because I know within our community sometimes there's this tendency to minimize mm-hmm. and to shame those who haven't experienced the same thing that you've experienced.
Facts.
And it's unfortunate because you're leading that individual to relive that horror all over again, re-victimization. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying to myself, damn, okay, man, maybe, maybe your chest poked out. Maybe you could handle that, but that other brother couldn't.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, not just in our community, but in society, they do that. They pretty much, they whomp on another dude because, look, man, you ain't tough enough. You ain't strong enough, And it pretty much, shows this hierarchy of, well, because I can do this and I can carry this, then that makes me more of a man than you. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, all it does is just shows that, man, how you just sometimes either you are desensitized to the situation or you don't even know it yet, but you need help.
Yeah, facts. And also what it does is it further, it creates more of a barrier for people to get help. Like, how you gonna go and get help if people making fun of you for wanting to help? You know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. you ain't even comfortable enough to ask for the help because people gonna say you soft. They gonna say you a punk. Oh, you got shot at and you scared? Like, what? I'm scared because I got shot at? Like, that's a normal reaction, bro. But the hood, the hyper masculinity within our neighborhoods, it really prevents a lot of people from doing a lot of work that they need to do because it's cool in a sense. Like we've taken our trauma and made it to something to be proud of. Like it's such a crazy dynamic, and I don't like to say crazy, not in the context of mental illness, but it's such a odd dynamic. You know what I mean? Like, why are we praising trauma? Like, who can take the most trauma? Like, we don't even really see ourselves as deserving of, adequate mental health. And it's sad, really.
Well, let's just be honest though, Aaron. I mean, a lot of us weren't getting these messages until maybe recently.
That's facts.
There were a lot of African American male therapists or helpers. I think it's less than 3% black male helpers in the whole country. Because it's pretty much a female dominated industry. You have your Caucasian men and women, and then you have your sisters.
Yep.
And then
and I don't mean to cut you off, and then what make it even more rare for a black man from the inner city to get the adequate help that he needs is because, it might be a few black female therapists, it might be a few black male therapists, but how many of them are really truly culturally competent on that level to understand what's going on in the hood? You know what I mean? Like, I say this humbly, but I usually look at myself as a unicorn. To be somebody that come from the inner city that kind of was, I was in the street life a little bit. That's something that's so rare to be able to reach that population. Like, and I would like to see more brothers and sisters from the hood that come from a certain background to really involve themselves in therapy because that type of therapist is needed.
And we can go on and on in that direction. I'm just going to touch that point right there.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of money, a lot of scholarships, a lot of grants, and to change the mentality to actually get there. Because nowadays, everybody, they see the dollars and they say, well, I can go ahead and be a coach. And that's another story I got to talk to you off wax for another day. But again, we're talking about trauma. And we're talking about African-American males, minority males, who've dealt with harsh traumas and situations that still plague them to this day. To the point where when they're with their respective partners or so, they are triggered by certain actions. And we see some of the violence and we see some of the carnage. One of the things I noticed about the whole pandemic is that when we all went on lockdown, the number of domestic violence went up. I mean, it just shot up. Because before, we had opportunities to go and get those breaks and get away and decompress from whatever was ailing us at that point in time. Now, you were sitting right on top of the individual that was triggering and causing a lot of your trauma.
Yeah.
And with that being said, that you saw a lot of alcoholism. That went up. Even pornographic usage went up. And the domestic violence. I mean, what are your thoughts to that right there?
Well, I think the pandemic did a number on us, man. Like that was trauma in itself, and a lot of the issues that people may have been able to cope with through different ways, like you said, getting out the house and, maybe going to work or doing certain things. When we went into the pandemic, a lot of that stuff was cut off and people didn't really know how to cope with it. And then you in the house with somebody that you may not necessarily even really like them in the way that you thought you did prior to the pandemic. Now all those issues are being exposed and you are being cut off from any sort of coping mechanism that you might have had prior to that. So it just compounds the trauma that we're experiencing, not to mention the COVID virus itself, the impending danger that's associated with that. We don't even have to talk about that. We're just talking about the variables outside of the virus itself. So all those things coupled just really created a real traumatic experience for a lot of people. And we still in it. So we haven't even really fully figured out how to address that monster.
All right. So I'm gonna put you out there now. I'm gonna put the camera on you. And I want you to tell our audience, what are your thoughts from this whole COVID experience when it relates to trauma? What do you see going forward?
Well, I think a lot of people are going to have a lot more issues that they need to address after this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever it's going to be over. We don't even know when it's really going to be over. But I think that a lot of us not only had to deal with additional issues because of COVID, like, you know, the trauma of being insecure in your employment, or the trauma of worrying about is you going to get sick when you're walking out the house, or the trauma of having to lose a loved one to COVID, or potentially losing your own life, or worrying about your own family every time they step out the house. Those things are going to do a number on a lot of people, and we really need to do some research and really find out what we need to do as clinicians to really address these things. We're really going to see a lot of the after effects of COVID-19 moving forward.
So, my brother,
where
there's a cause, what is the possible solution? What do you think are some things that are beneficial, going to be beneficial as we move forward through this process? Is it more counseling? Is it more resources? Is it more activities? Is it more alcohol? What what are some of the things that you believe have to take place in order for us to find some semblance of normalcy or balance moving forward?
Well, the alcohol sound good. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm just playing. But I mean, you know, I really don't know. You know, that's a tough question. You know, because I would say it's different stuff for different people. You know, I mean, like for me, I think what I need after COVID is more resources. I think that I need clinicians that really understand what's going on. I think I need more programs that specifically address, you know, some of the problems that happen as a result of COVID. And we ain't even just talking about mental illnesses. We're talking about a lot of people lost their businesses behind that. A lot of people lost their job behind that. A lot of people lost certain opportunities behind it. Like those people going to school that had to drop out and this, that, and the third. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of stuff that needs to be addressed because of COVID-19, and there ain't really no quick and fast answers to it, which it makes it even more tough to deal with.
Rod, you said a mouthful right there. I was thinking about there was something that came across the wire last night or so that I guess the Supreme Court ruled that the measures that the President of our United States put in place to put a moratorium on eviction, I guess they said you can't do that. And so now you know what happens is that when you have people that are starting to lose their homes, they're starting to lose, you know, their lifestyles as they know it or so because of a lot of the loss of revenue, income to their household. There's somewhat a level of chaos that begins to ensue afterwards. And it's unfortunate. It's definitely unfortunate.
Yeah.
Dang. Now, I didn't want to kind of end this on a grim or bitter note or anything like that. But anyway, Aaren, we've come to the end of this program.
Yeah.
Give our audience where they can find you at, who you with, where you at, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Everybody can find me on Instagram at the Mental Health Matters. So it's at THE Mental Health Matters. You can find me on Facebook at Mental Health Matters as well. And you can find me on Twitter at 1MHM Matters. And I also have a blog, is www.thementalhealthmatters. And I can be reached on my personal web page, which is Aaren Snyder, LMFT, all one word.
Well, Aaren, Mr. Marriage and Family Therapist, thank you for coming through.
Yeah.
Thank you for humoring us. Your wealth of wisdom.
Yes, sir.
You know, man, I got to mess with you. Man. But, man, kudos to you. Man, you're doing a lot of good work in the community. You represent us very well. Please, whatever you do, not find yourself in the back of the car. And with shiny lights on top of it, man. We need more brothers out there like you, doing your thing, helping us. And we need you to be free and licensed full, as opposed to, man, barred and canceled.
Yes, sir.
Most definitely. Sir. All right. So, man, take care, man. I'll holler at you later, bro.
All right, anytime, bro.
Definitely. What's burning on the bushes next?